Hello and welcome back to another of my Photoshop videos. Now in this one we're going to Photoshop up a Dinky Thunderbolt P-47 that's been built by somebody else, and he's asked me to turn some photos of his finished masterpiece into a sort of kind of dinky poster like I did with the Spitfire. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of narrate you and tell you what I'm doing, but I'm going to kind of let it run a bit quicker. This video I think ran to 1 hour and 20 minutes, so I'm just going to trim this down and try to get it over as quickly as possible for those of you who haven't got much patience, but also impart some techniques, etc. Now I've been sent some iPhone photos of a Dinky Thunderbolt which has been finished in a very nice silver finish, and we're going to try and turn this into a poster. Now obviously, being from a camera phone, they're not the greatest quality, but it doesn't really matter because as long as we've got the shapes and the outlines, we can actually make something which looks a bit like an illustration anyway. Okay, so what I've done here is I've created a background colour fill layer, and I'm starting to cut out the first P-47. And so I'm using the red background as a way of making sure that I'm actually doing the cutout correctly. Because if you just use any old background, you might find, or any other content in your stack, your Photoshop stack down the bottom right corner, will actually confuse you as to what you're doing. So it's a good idea to have a nice contrasting colour to see where you're going wrong. So what I'm doing is I've used the quick selection tool to mask out the P-47 roughly, and of course what it'll do is, because this photo's been taken not quite in the right setting, it can't quite work out very quickly what's going on with the image. So it's done it, but it's kind of made quite a lot of mistakes. And so what I'm doing now is I'm going around using the paintbrush tool on the mask for that image to just fix all the little problems. Now you can see here what I'm doing here is the one wing went out of the frame of the photo, and so what I've done is I copied the wingtip from the other end of the plane and flipped it over and then glued it, if you like, over the missing part of that wing. I'm just fixing the mask now. Okay, so now we're going to the next P-47 image, and again we're using the quick selection tool to do a quick cutout, which Photoshop doesn't do very well, and then we're able to then fix it manually by painting on the mask, because there's quite a few areas which are very low contrast with the background, so they just can't be identified very quickly. You can see it's grey meets grey, so it requires some human intervention there. And as you can see, your cell phones don't have particularly great pixel quality because the sensors are so small. Like a nice sunny day, they're great, but like in low light conditions, you can get like this noise builds up, and that can really mess up when you're trying to do selections like this, because it can't tell where the image starts and ends. Now you'll notice also in this one's got the propeller spinning, and I find it actually easier to do them when the propeller's static. Okay, so we're just cutting out the next P-47 using the same technique with the quick selection tool, and then fixing it with the manually with the paintbrush on the mask. Now you'll notice this photograph of the P-47 is backwards, and the reason I've done that is I liked the look of this particular shot that had been supplied, but the plane was facing the wrong way. So what I've done is I've just flipped the plane so it faces the right way round, but of course the markings are all going to be wrong now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy them, flip them, and then paint them back in, and then using a mask I'm just going to blend them back into the plane. So now we've got our squadron code all correct, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this again, put it over the Z code, paint out everything but the F. So now we've got an F plane and a Z plane in our flight. And what I'll do is in a bit as well is I'll paint out that serial number, because it's not really going to add anything to the picture. So I'm just rearranging the planes now to give us a sort of general composition. Okay, so we're just getting our composition sorted out. Now I've got a picture of stained paper which I'm going to put on the bottom of the stack. So this is going to be, if you like, our dirty paper, worn out paper background. And then what I've done is I've got another colourful picture of stained paper on top. And what I've done with that is I've just saturated it a bit to give it that sort of 60s, 70s bright colourful feel. And here I'm just putting the spinning propeller merging that in. I've had to make a copy of it and then change its blend mode. Okay, so now I'm just copying the propellers, and then I'll copy them to a new document, and I'll use the radial blur to make them look like they're spinning, and then I just merge them in. And see, just reposition them slightly, and just use a bit of masking so that you can't see the old sharp propeller and you can now see the blurred one. And repeat this again for the next plane. So we'll copy the propeller, copy to a new document, use the radial blur filter on it, copy it back, put it over the old one, and then mask away the one underneath so they don't show. That's just a quick mask, you see. And I'm just making sure it all works. Use the filter gallery, the dry brush, cutout, watercolor, and a couple of others. If you just apply them quickly as an action, you can basically get that effect. Right, there you can see the tail number being painted out using the clone tool. See, in this technique you can do so much by basically just removing information using posterization. So you've got your cutout filter, your outline filter, watercolor filter, and like a dry brush. You can do quite a lot. And so what I'm doing here now is I'm just trying to fix the color balance issue with the near plane, because it was photographed indoors. Like a tungsten light has made the plane look quite orangey. So I'm just changing the color to blue, because obviously being a silver plane, it should really be reflecting the sky. So I'm just trying to get the color sorted out there. So I'm just using a color fill layer and a mask to get the effect I want. You see, I'm just going through different options there, blend modes, and how dense to do it, and a mask here now, just to apply it. And these things are basic things you have to do by experimentation. If you do this one technique on another image, it may not work because the content of the image is different. And the trick with Photoshop is getting to know what will work for a particular image. And like this thing about whole thing about using presets. You see people selling them on Facebook and what have you. They only work for certain images. You'll find a lot of it. You might get an image you want to do it for yourself, it just does not work. So you have to kind of know what you're doing. Okay, so we're just changing the composition slightly and playing with saturation and the size of the planes, etc. But basically, that's the job done. And so now we'll just go and add a title, like we did with the Spitfire. And if you want to see that in detail, I suggest watching the Spitfire video, because that shows you in more detail. Okay, so as we did in the Spitfire video, we just added a red background, and we got our text in yellow, and the font is Super Clarendon, which you can download off the internet for free. But it doesn't come with an italicized option, so what I did was basically typed in the text I wanted, converted it to, rasterized it to a normal picture layer, and then used the distort transformation to actually make it look like it's italicized. And that's basically it. That's how it was done. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you found that interesting.